Welcome to Sold with Webinars, a podcast that aims to uncover how the most successful experts, coaches, consultants, and e-course professionals sell their products and services with just one sales presentation or webinar. A simple sales webinar can transform the business and life of a solopreneur. And this podcast will show you how other experts just like you are generating 6 and 7 figures per year online with their webinars. So let's get started. Hey there, JoelEvergreen here, and thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited about having our guest on today's show, Shanda Sumpter, and we talked about a lot of great things. Now, Shanda is a personal customer of mine. We just got finished launching her webinar, and I'm really excited for you to hear her story because she actually set the record for the highest performing webinar that we've ever launched straight to cold traffic. Now, I'm not going to ruin the nitty gritty details of what we talked about, but the one thing that I want you to focus on is the idea of having this core central message that you have to tie your webinar to and understand how long this process takes. And so without further ado, we're going to hop right into today's show and right into today's episode. I know you're going to enjoy it. Shanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we chatted a little bit beforehand before we hopped on our interview, and I don't want to get into the stats just quite yet, but I do want to let my audience know that this broke the record for our first webinar launch of the highest performing conversion webinar that we've ever done. So before we jump into it, Shanda, why don't you give my audience, who isn't completely familiar with what you do, but give them a quick background about what your business is, who you are, and what you're currently doing.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. My business is pretty simple. I think simple works. I really focus on helping people build audiences and then create reoccurring business models. So like you said, my company is called Heartcore Business. It's kind of a strange story. When I quit corporate America, I no longer had a boss. And I said, well, who's my boss? And I was like, God. God's my boss. And I was like, and then I heard this crazy little stat about there's nothing in our brain or in our body that controls our heart. And they don't really understand why our heart beats. And so I was like, that's the connection with God. So I named my company, which is funny, Joel, because I actually was embarrassed by the name for so many years. But I named my company in Heartcore Business for the sake of, I just felt like I wanted to run this company in a divine way that was always on point with our audience and our customers versus just what I wanted to create selfishly in my life.
Well, that's like the key elements of a brand, right? You have a great story behind it and people ask you about it. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It is cool. And I'm excited that finally we are crushing it now.
Mm-hmm. It's been a long time I say, quote unquote, long time in the making, because sometimes in this world of online business, people think it's push button easy. You get something that, you just launch a website and it just magically makes money, right? So what we were talking about before we hopped on this show, we were talking about like the direction that I really wanted to take this was how much effort it actually takes to put into a webinar and get it right and get the process right. And so, Shanda, I would love if you could kind of walk us through like from where we met, this is being recorded in April. I think we met in October. You said it was through Genius Network and referral there. But so take us through the timeline of like what we went through so my audience can really understand the process that we went through together.
Yeah. So first I'll call myself out a little bit and say, we teach webinars inside my company, but I'm not an expert at webinars. It's just a piece that everybody needs to be doing in order to sell virtually and leverage your time. So I knew that I was good at it, but I wasn't great at it. And I was leaving a ton of money on the table. And so that's why I reached out to people in the Genius Network and I was like, does anybody know like who's like the best person I could hire to help me with my webinar? I don't care how much it costs. I just want the best person. And your name came back a couple times. And so that's why I called you. And so here's the deal. If someone's throwing together a webinar just off their inspiration or their thought process of how they do a presentation or even fumbling through it, the truth is that between you and I working together, I put in over 50 hours of work. And that's not the graphics because I didn't touch the graphics. Like I had nothing to do with the graphics on the slides. All I did was the thinking process with you, which was extraordinarily detailed. And just actually thinking through it. And I rehearsed it a couple times to just understand the flow. But the point is that's like working like over a week straight, like 8 hours a day on a webinar. And I just don't think that people are putting in that type of effort because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, it usually takes us about 40 hours when we create a webinar from scratch. And people don't really understand how much work goes into it. They think, oh, it's just a slide deck. It's just a presentation. It's like, if you want to treat it like a presentation and you want to treat it like just something else, like expect the results that you put into it. But I'm curious, when we were going through our calls, like our first couple of calls, like when did it kind of hit you when you realize like there's a lot more into the...
There's a system.
Yeah, there's a system. Yeah. Like what was that aha moment for you? If I can put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. I actually had a lot of aha moments working with you. First of all, I realized how much of a visionary I am and how many steps I miss when I teach. So not only did I create a great webinar that I know we'll get into, but I actually got a takeaway of slowing down when I coach and train our clients, right? Because the people who stay with me are the people who are visionaries and they don't need all the details. But when it comes to doing webinars versus, let's say, me speaking on stages or leading masterminds, when it comes to doing webinars, I had to get into the detail. And so I really appreciated working with you. I think I said that at least 3 times while we were like working through it. I was like, I really appreciate you having me drill down on some of the details so that I didn't create another webinar that was like high level surface, but actually taught something that made a difference for the people who were watching, whether they purchased from me or didn't purchase from me. They at least got an understanding of what are the details that you need to put together to be able to get a movement inside of your business. So I really appreciated that. So I learned a lot about myself because I thought that I was specific because I'm so direct and to the point, but I was missing a lot of steps that for a lot of people, they would spin because they'd be like, I don't get it. And they might even be nervous to ask what, like the details. Like I've even heard that in my staff, like they'll ask each other, they'll ask the management team, and the management team will say, oh, so-and-so came to me because they were nervous that they should have gotten it. And that's the power of a good visionary. When we lead a story or we lead our movement, we can move people, but often they're like, well, what am I buying?
Mm-hmm.
Or you know what I mean? Which is not a compliment. Even though in our industry, a lot of people are like, they laugh about stuff like that. And I'm like, that's not a compliment. The compliment is they buy, they know what they're buying, and they stay in it.
Yeah, exactly. It'll lower your refund rate. I mean, it produces better customers. And it's funny because I hear a version of that story come from all of my successful customers. And they say, Joel, the one thing that I really learned through this process was that it's like I'm too close to my own product. Like as the instructor, you're too close to your own product because you taught it so many times. And so when you teach it so many times, it's a distorted view of what you think your customer actually wants. And so when you work with somebody who is able to separate themselves and say, okay, why would I be interested in learning from Shanda on how to build a business? Okay, great. I know that I need to have a list. Like, okay, do I really know what a list is? Like, do I know how to get that list? And so you have to really kind of break it down step by step. And as we were going through it, I'm like, I was really excited when you first launched it because I'm like, this is going to crush. Like there's not many where you get that feeling, but I'm like, I can't wait till she pushes this live because it's going to blow up. So.
Yeah. And I just want to say a part of being successful is being generous. And so when you would ask me, well, how does this work? I'm generous enough to share the truth. You know what I mean? I think that's a really important thing a distinction when people are working with you or creating their own webinars. I always hear this thing I don't want to give them that detail because why would they hire me? And it's like, no. When they understand the points that you help lay out in a webinar, then they more than ever want to hire you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So out of curiosity, what was the most important part for you in the webinar flow? Knowing what you know now, when we first started working together, where did you think we were going to spend the most time? And if that held true, let us know.
I thought we were going to spend the most time on the flow of the slides. So my expectations of what I thought were true. But again, back down to the details.
Yeah.
Like me teaching what a generator email is or how to get influencers to promote you. Like I never thought about it like that because I was so in, here's how you reach influencers that don't know who you are, even if you don't have a business or you've never been successful before. It never dawned on me that people would ever like need to know that detail. It just never dawned on me. I'm like, these are just the steps. You do step 1, 2, 3, and then you get this end result. And you're like, no. Why don't you teach step 1, 2, 3? And so they totally understand it, and those details, it never dawned on me to do that ever.
Yeah. Seems so simple looking back on it, but it's so hard to extract it for your own business. And it's funny because when I build webinars for my own company, like I have to hire somebody else to take a step back and say, is this resonating? Is this making sense? So that's really cool. So let's talk about your launch. Let's talk about how it formed, talk about your funnel, talk about everything that people would be interested in learning about a webinar launch, because you're the record holder right now. So,
and I'm still working on it to get it even better. So something that I'll say is that, I don't think you ever make it, and that you're always, somebody said to me this morning, you're only ever as good as the personal development and the education you continue to chase after. And so my webinar is converting very well. The evergreen version is converting, I think, at 14 or just over 14%.
That's insane.
which was only like really like just below what the live one was doing. So the live one was 15.5. And then I think it was 15.5. And then the evergreen was 14. So, all I'm trying to figure out is how do I put more traffic through it? You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And that's a blessing. I mean, that is a huge blessing, because another thing that when we were working together that helped is that you really helped me make this connected to a bigger movement of what I wanted to play in, which is this understanding that I think that people need to be responsible for being financially self-reliant, right? And you and I were talking about that together, and you helped me really kind of coin that and realize like that is what I'm trying to help people do. Like I think it's irresponsible not to have good cash flow. Like I think it's irresponsible. You can't blame it on a job or a coach or your husband or that you have kids. I breastfed for 1.5 years and still grew our company to 5 million. You know what I mean? Like, so you can't blame your situations, but what you can do is get something like a webinar working for you, build a great audience that you can push through that webinar. And what's crazy is that, I've only done webinars that have converted with my email list, which is really a warm market. And this webinar is converting with these numbers with completely cold traffic. You know what I mean? So we only sent one email to my database to just kind of let them know what was going on. And then we've been only running cold traffic. So we ran a 5-day challenge into the webinar, and it was just incredible. It was just absolutely incredible, to the point where it's like these moments when you just give it a try, or hire someone like you to help you actually create something that works. Then all you have to do is find other ways to get more attention on it. So ways that I never would have, like now I'm looking at podcast sponsorship, and, I would never be thinking about spending $20,000 or $15,000 for a podcast person to mention something about, a live event, sure, because I know that I can convert, but a virtual platform that's absolutely leveraged, that's just a total breakthrough for me. That gets me up even if I'm feeling sick. You know what I mean? Because that's exciting.
That is exciting. So your offer is $997 too. So you're converting at 15.5% live and 14% evergreen on cold traffic. That's selling $1,000 product, which is just like, I know Russell doesn't mind me sharing these numbers, but some of his best conversions that he did were, I think like his best converting webinar was a JV to John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneur on Fire audience, and it was 18%. So he's not getting cold traffic at this point. And so just to give you a heads up, he's done $30 million from that webinar. And so, I mean, you've got some you've got some pretty big potential upside with this. So I'm really excited for you.
Yay!
Yeah. So that's awesome. That's really cool. So really, I just want to end this with what's next. I mean, you're talking about traffic. I mean, you're talking about like, this is the movement. Actually, let me back up real quick, because what you said with the, with being self-reliant, I do want to talk about that really quick and how critical that is with establishing your mission for your audience. And you were able to tie some really great statistics, and because you knew it right off the top of your head when we first had our first call.
Yeah. So in 2020, there's going to be 5 million jobs, and that's just what we see now. So if it's anything like the real estate market, where we thought in '08 the real estate market was going to crash X amount and then it kept crashing, my point is you can't predict the future. You just can't, right? So, right now they're saying that 5 million jobs are going to be replaced by technology, jobs like accountants, jobs like teachers. They now have robots this summer that are coming out that teach your kids and tutor them. You just have to think about how many homes that impacts, right? How many people are teachers in this world? How many people are tutors in this world? How many people are truck drivers in this world that are driving our parcels around? There's self-driving cars now. My son, who's 2, will never drive a car, right? So you just have to look. This is like the real estate market coming forward without it needing to be a crash and a devastation in your life. But it's happening. And if you don't plan for it, then it will be a devastation in your life. And you can't blame losing a job or all of a sudden your referral business, it just goes away. I have one person who literally was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt because her whole business was created, brick and mortar business was created by a referral market in a small town. Right now, I'm happy to say she made $130,000 last week and retired her husband. Right. And so you got to get responsible with your money. And I think that building a business either on the side, like for instance, a financial advisor or an accountant, I have an accountant that we had her launch something called the CEO Club, where she's helping entrepreneurs understand their P&Ls and their numbers. I mean, most of us have no idea, other than we see X amount of money coming in and those are our conversion rates. And here's what I netted. But they actually don't understand how to grow their companies, right? So what if you took your accounting world and actually created a $25,000 program? Do you think people would pay for that? Yeah, if you build an audience, right? If you build an audience and you communicate with that audience, you know how to serve them, absolutely. So, I just don't think that people get that. You and I were talking about that when I was creating this webinar. They just don't understand that they're empowered to do something about it. 2.5 years is still a long way away. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that's still a lot can happen in 2.5 years, 3 years. Get on it now, because my experience is it takes about 3 years to tip for most people, so now's a good time to really get on this and take care of yourself, because your success is, as Larry Winget says, your own damn fault, right? It just is. So you better do something about it. So I'm really out there pushing that and talking about that because I think it's really important.
And so for those of you who are listening right now, the key thing that I want you to take away from that is the sole mission of self-reliance and being able to support a thesis that you present. I was just at a Todd Brown marketing event last week. He's about to launch one of his programs. But he was talking about this whole idea of like when you're creating a sales message, and this is pretty much what I do on the webinars and how I craft the sales webinar messages. But he goes, you have to think of your message as if you were a prosecutor presenting your case to a jury, right? You have to have a sole mission, a sole purpose of like, okay, here's why I think this person is guilty, and then present that thesis to the jury. And your job is to present enough evidence that your thesis, which would be in your case, like self-reliance, that's the mission, right? That thesis is valid and convince the jury, which would be the audience, that, okay, this is true and here's the next step, right? And so he did a much better job of explaining that, but I thought it was a good analogy.
No, I actually love it. I think it helps all of us. This is why I think you're great, because you're able to articulate in a way that you get through people's walls, but it helps all of us when we're actually making our presentations to get that. If we do think that we're standing in front of a jury and we want people to understand why this is the way, why this is the successful way, the win in the courtroom, then it has you present your case a lot differently.
Yeah, it's very, very important. And I've always had a hard time explaining that, but when you talked about it as what we just explained. I'm like, that's it. I'm latching onto it. Todd, I'll give you credit, but that's what I need.
Yeah.
So.
No, I get it. I get it. Totally. Yeah. It was a blessing working with you. I really appreciate, and definitely will continue to refer you customers because you are fantastic at what you do.
I appreciate it. So just to wrap up real quick, the everything that we've talked about today, I really wanted to tell this story because for those of you who are working on your own webinars, I highly encourage you, but like, you have to understand that this takes time and it's not really meant for beginners. Like, this is an opportunity for you to take your business, to add multiple 7 figures per year, but you have to be in it for the long haul. Like, it's at least 40 to 60 hours of hardcore, in-depth work to get your message out and explain it. And so, Shanda, thank you so much for telling your story. Where can people find more about your business and just promote yourself for a couple of minutes here?
Yeah, well, it's very easy to find me on social media on Facebook, Heartcore Business on Facebook. And then on Instagram, it's just my name, Shanda Sumpter, Sumpter like Fort Sumter. And then you can Google our website. We've got a lot of great blogs and writing on there and videos to help support, which is heartcorebusiness.com.
Awesome. One last question for you, because this just popped up as you were talking about that. You did an infomercial back in the day, right?
I've done 2. Yeah.
I have another client who's done an infomercial for 8 years on PBS. Does this have the potential to outperform your infomercial?
Yeah.
It does?
Yeah. We even took our infomercial. Our infomercial right now is running, it's running online right now. And it actually converts better on online than it actually did on TV, which is crazy, right? And so shut down the call center and said, let's just do this. But, I'm selling a $97 product off of that. So it's not even in comparison, just the ROI isn't even in comparison. So 97, 997, like very, very different. So I don't know I actually don't know of an infomercial that sells $1,000 product or more. I'm not saying that they're not out there, but all of the education that I was getting is I needed something $97 or even less, right, to start the funnel up. And so that's a very expensive funnel. If it works, fantastic, but that is a very expensive funnel. But don't get me wrong, when it hits, it hits. But, so like Dean Graziosi and those guys, God bless you, because that is awesome. So, it depends on who it is. But if it's an average woman or man like me, I don't know, it's an expensive game at $200,000, $250,000, $75,000 a pop to create something that you're going to start testing.
Yeah.
Right. Because then you're spending, $12,000 to $20,000 a week to test it and tweak it. Where a webinar, you can literally just run some traffic to it and go, that's not working. Let's adjust this. Run some more. Okay, that's working now, but that's not working. And that it's the same process on an infomercial. It just, you need some deep pockets.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've loved our interview. I've loved working with you, and I love your story. We're going to stay connected, I'm sure. And I'm hoping to make it out to one of your List Power events very shortly. But we'll wrap up for today, and we'll let you get back to your family and your, I don't want to say new husband, but you did just recently get married. But it was, I didn't want that to come out wrong, but you recently got married. So newly married. There we go.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. Well, thanks, Shanda. It's been a blast. And for everyone listening right now, I'll include all the details of her contact information down in the show notes. And give her some love. Go ahead and connect with her on social media. Follow her. She's a blessing to follow and a blessing to just talk with. So appreciate your time today. And everyone else will be talking to you soon. Take care. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. You can also follow and watch the behind-the-scenes look at how I'm personally launching a brand new 6- and 7-figure product from scratch at soldwithwebinars.com/TV. And if you'd like to come hang out with other fellow experts, join our Facebook group at soldwithwebinars.com/experts. Join us next time, and I'll see you there.